My daughter once looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're always whining, Mom." Not, "Thanks for raising me." Not, "I appreciate you." Just that. I remember staring at my coffee, my hands trembling slightly, not because I was angry, but because I realized she no longer saw me as a mother, just as background noise. That night, I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I rewrote my will. What I did next wasn't revenge. It was clarity. If you've ever been dismissed by the very person you gave your life to, you might want to hear how this ends. Let me know where you're listening from and whether you think I overreacted or finally woke up. I used to be my daughter's everything, her anchor, her shelter, the one she turned to when the world felt too heavy. Those early days of our bond are etched in my memory, a time when my love was her lifeline and I gave it without question. When her marriage fell apart, I saw the pain in her eyes, the way she tried to hide it behind a brave face. She was a single mom now, with a toddler who kept asking for daddy. I didn't think twice. I opened my home to them. For 6 months, my small house in the suburbs became their refuge. I'd wake up early to make her pancakes, the kind with extra syrup she loved as a kid, hoping it'd bring her a sliver of peace. At night, when she couldn't sleep, I'd sit with her, listening to her quiet sobs, telling her she was enough. I took care of my granddaughter, too, changed diapers, read bedtime stories so she could breathe, maybe find her footing again. It was cramped, and my part-time job at the library barely covered the bills, but I never minded. She was my girl, and I'd do anything to see a smile. Then came the birth of her second child. She'd moved to a new city by then, chasing a fresh start with a decent job. But 2 kids alone, it was too much. So I packed my bags and left my quiet life behind. My book club, my garden, my familiar streets. I rented a tiny place near her, close enough to hear the baby's cries through the thin walls. Every night, I was there, warming bottles, rocking that little one to sleep, giving my daughter a chance to rest. My back ached. My eyes burned from exhaustion, but I kept going. I wanted her to know she wasn't alone, that I'd cross any distance for her. When she set her heart on buying a house, a cozy fixer-upper with a yard for the kids, I was so proud. She'd saved up, but the down payment was still out of reach. I didn't hesitate. I handed her $20,000 from my retirement fund, money I'd scraped together over years of careful planning. It wasn't a loan, not to me, no papers, no terms, just trust. I pictured her building a life there, a stable home for my grandbabies. That was worth more than any nest egg. She thanked me, of course, but it was quick, distracted, like she didn't quite grasp what it meant to me. I never asked for much in return, not the money, not even praise, just a little warmth, "How's your day, Mom?" or a hug that lingered. I didn't need grand gestures. I just wanted to feel seen. When she stumbled, lost a job, fought with a friend, I was there, steady as ever, offering whatever I could. But when I faltered, when my knees gave out from years of running to her rescue, she was rarely around. I'd call sometimes, just needing to hear her voice after a lonely day, and she'd say, "Mom, I'm swamped. Can I call you later?" Later never came. Once I waited by the phone all night, but it stayed silent. Still, I told myself it was fine. She was busy raising kids, chasing dreams. I shouldn't expect more. My role was to lift her up, not lean on her. But deep down, a quiet ache grew, a wish for something small to show she cared. I didn't know then that this was just the beginning, that the distance between us would stretch further than I could bear. It wasn't one sharp moment that shattered us. It was a slow, aching drift, like sand slipping through my fingers until the hollow shape of what we'd been was all that remained. I tried to ignore it at first, chalking it up to the natural pull of her busy life, her job, her kids, the relentless churn of responsibilities. But the truth crept in, quiet and unyielding, through the small cracks that widened with every missed call, every half-hearted visit. Each one carved a little deeper into the bond I'd once believed was forged in steel, leaving me clutching at shadows. Our phone calls, those precious threads that once tethered us, began to fray. Sundays used to be ours. She'd call right after lunch, her voice bubbling with tales of the kids' antics or some triumph at work. I'd settle into my armchair, the worn fabric soft against my skin, and let her words wrap around me like a warm blanket. I'd laugh when she did, offer a gentle nudge of advice when she paused for it. But then the calls shrank, clipped short by sighs and excuses. "Hey, Mom, just checking in," she'd say, her voice thin, distracted by the clink of dishes or the hum of the TV. I'd ask about her day, hungry for a piece of her world, but she'd murmur, "I'm swamped. Can we talk later?" Later never arrived. I'd sit there some nights, the phone cold in my hand, its blank screen staring back at me, and wonder when I'd slipped off her list of priorities. Visits stung more. She used to fling the door wide, her hug a burst of warmth that smelled faintly of lavender shampoo, her arms squeezing me tight, even if just for a heartbeat. Now, it's a distracted nod, a limp pat on the shoulder, like I'm some delivery driver she barely knows. I'd shuffle in, arms full of groceries or a stuffed bear for the kids, feeling like an intruder in a home that once felt like an extension of mine. One time, I leaned in for a hug and she flinched, stepping back with a forced chuckle. "Mom, I'm all gross from the gym," she said, brushing me off, her gaze darting away. I missed the way she used to linger, the way her presence once filled the space between us. Now, it's like chasing smoke. I reach, and she's gone. One night, I caught her words by accident. I was in her kitchen, hands plunged into warm, soapy water, the sponge rough against a stubborn pot. Their voices floated in from the living room, her and her husband, low and easy. "Mom's coming over again," she said, a faint edge in her tone, like she was airing a complaint. "You know how she gets, always making a fuss." He laughed, a deep rumble, and she joined him, her giggle sharp as a blade. I froze, suds dripping down my arms, pooling on the counter, my chest tightening until I could barely breathe. When had I become their joke? I'd raised her, held her through nightmares and heartbreaks, and now I was the nag they smirked about behind my back. Then there was the cookie incident. I'd baked her favorite, oatmeal, with a heavy shake of cinnamon, the kitchen thick with that sweet, spicy scent, and drove over unannounced, thinking it'd spark a smile. As I neared the porch, the screen door creaked open, just enough for her voice to slip out. She was on the phone, lounging on the couch, oblivious to me. "My mom? Oh, she's so over the top, always harping on something. It's exhausting." My stomach dropped, the plate trembling in my hands. Exhausting? Me? I set the cookies down on the step, the ceramic clinking softly against the wood, and backed away, my pulse hammering in my ears. That night, I replayed every moment I'd ever leaned on her, every call I'd made, wondering if I'd smothered her, if my love had turned into a weight she couldn't bear. But the dinner, that was the wound that wouldn't close. It was rare for us all to gather, her, the kids, her husband, squeezed around her oak table. The air rich with the smell of pot roast I'd simmered all day. I'd tended it like a ritual, browning the meat, adding rosemary from my garden, hoping the flavors would pull us back to simpler times. I wanted to see her eyes light up, to feel like I still mattered. As we ate, I started a story about her father, how he'd proposed under a sky blazing with stars, his nervous laugh as he dropped the ring in the grass. It was a piece of us, a thread I thought she'd want to hold. But mid-sentence, she rolled her eyes, her fork scraping the plate with a harsh clatter. "God, Mom, you're always whining about the past," she snapped. Laughter exploded, her husband's booming guffaw, the kids' high-pitched squeals, her friend's sly grin. I stopped cold, heat flooding my face, my tongue thick with unsaid words. I stared at my plate, the roast congealing in its gravy, and shrank into myself. They laughed on, the sound ringing in my skull, while I sat there, invisible. That was it. The moment I knew. It wasn't just distance or time pulling her away. It was rejection, plain and cutting. I wasn't her safe harbor anymore. I was the relic she tolerated, the voice she drowned out, surrounded by the clatter of forks and their easy chatter. I'd never felt so alone. The food turned bitter in my mouth, and I pushed it away, my hands trembling under the table. She didn't look up. No one did. They moved on, their world spinning without me, and I faded into the dim light of a room that no longer held a place for me. The morning after that dinner, I woke to a stillness that seeped into every corner of me. No restless churn of thoughts, no sharp pang of tears, just a calm I hadn't felt in years. I lay there, eyes tracing the ceiling's faint cracks, each line a silent witness to decades of quiet resilience. Last night at the table, I'd been a ghost, my words lost in her cold, distant gaze. But today was mine. Today, I'd reclaim something, not out of spite, but out of a need to root myself in my own worth again. I dressed slowly, deliberately, sliding into my navy blouse, its soft fabric a comfort against my skin. My fingers found the pearl necklace my husband gave me all those years ago, its cool weight grounding me as I fastened the clasp. The drive to the lawyer's office was hushed, the world outside a muted swirl of golden leaves and heavy gray clouds. I left the radio off, craving the silence, the space to let my mind wander. The streets slipped by. The playground where her giggles once danced in the air. The corner store where we'd pick out candy on sunlit afternoons. Those memories felt like borrowed time now, fragile and faded. The lawyer's office perched above a row of shops, its steep staircase creaking under my careful steps. Inside, the air carried the scent of aged books, leather, and faintly bitter coffee, a strange solace. Mr. Jensen rose from his chair, his handshake warm, his smile gentle but edged with curiosity. "Good to see you, Mrs. Thompson. What brings you in today?" he asked, gesturing to the seat across his cluttered desk. I eased into the chair, the leather cool beneath me, and clasped my hands tight in my lap. "I need to change my will," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor I felt inside. He nodded, reaching for his notepad, his pen poised. "Tell me what you're thinking." I drew a slow breath, the words forming like a confession. "I want my daughter out of it, completely." They fell into the room, solid and unyielding. Mr. Jensen's pen paused mid-scratch, and he looked up, his brows knitting together. "Are you certain?" he asked, his tone soft but searching, as if testing the depth of my resolve. I turned to the window. Outside, the street pulsed quietly. A boy pedaled by on a rusty bike. A woman tugged her coat tighter against the breeze. My granddaughter's face flickered in my mind, her small hand slipping into mine at the dinner table, her voice piercing the silence. "Grandma, are you okay?" That was the tether I clung to now. I met his gaze. Yes, I'm certain. We worked through it methodically. The house, my little sanctuary, with its weathered porch and roses that still bloomed despite everything, would pass to my granddaughter. She saw me, truly saw me, in ways her mother had long since forgotten. My savings, pieced together from years of frugal days and careful nights, would go to a program for lonely seniors. I knew that hollow ache, the empty chairs at holidays, the phone that rarely rang. If I could ease that for someone else, it'd mean something. Before signing, I hesitated, my mind drifting back. I saw her at 5, curls bouncing as she ran to me, arms wide, after scraping her knee in the yard. I'd scooped her up, kissed the hurt away, promised her the world. Where had that gone? The memory stung, but it steadied me too. Mr. Jensen handed me the pen, and I signed, the ink gliding across the page, the sound of it, a sharp, final scratch, echoing in the stillness. He printed a copy and slid it over, the paper crisp and official. I folded it into an envelope, my handwriting simple, updated estate plan. No flourishes, no apologies, just the truth, sealed shut. Stepping outside, the air bit at my cheeks, crisp and alive. The envelope rested in my purse, a quiet anchor. The sun broke through the clouds, painting the pavement in soft light and long shadows. I felt no bitterness, no heavy regret, just a release, like a sigh held too long. This wasn't about severing bonds. It was about choosing where my love still had a home. A week passed in quiet calm. I started waking early, brewing coffee as the house filled with the soft light of dawn, the world outside my window stirring slowly to life. Those mornings brought a stillness I hadn't felt in ages. I'd sit on the porch, sipping from my mug, watching Mr. Alvarez walk his little dog, the paper boy zip by on his bike. I thought about the envelope in my desk drawer, now not a burden, but a quiet certainty. I'd done what I needed to do. Still, deep down, I knew a storm was coming. It arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, just after lunch. I was in the kitchen, slicing apples for a pie, the steady rhythm of the knife, a soothing companion. The phone rang, sharp and sudden, slicing through the stillness. I wiped my hands on a towel, my heart quickening despite my best efforts to stay calm. Her name flashed on the screen, and for a moment I hesitated, my breath catching. Then I answered. "Mom?" Her voice was tight, trembling. "I found the envelope, the will. Is this real? Why isn't my name in it?" I leaned against the counter, the cool edge of the granite pressing into my back. "Yes," I said, my tone even. "It's real." Silence, a sharp intake of breath. "But why? Why would you do this? After everything?" Her words spilled out, a mix of confusion and anger. "You didn't even tell me." I closed my eyes, the memory of that dinner flooding back. Her eye roll, the laughter, my silence. "You said I whine too much," I replied, steady as the morning air. So I stopped. The line went quiet, heavy with the weight of unspoken things. I could almost see her, scrambling for an excuse like she always did. "Mom, I didn't mean it like that," she stammered. "You know how stressed I've been. You're overreacting." I glanced out the window, the sky a pale, endless blue. "Am I?" I asked softly. Or did I finally hear what you've been saying? She faltered, her breath hitching. You're punishing me. For one stupid comment. It's not fair. I smiled faintly, her accusations no longer sharp enough to wound. It's not about fair, I said. It's about what I can live with. She pushed back, her voice rising. So you're cutting me out? Like I don't matter? After everything I've done for you? The blame landed, but it didn't sting. I thought of the years I'd given her, the love I'd poured out, and the emptiness that came back. What have you done for me lately? I asked, not harshly, just honestly. When was the last time you asked how I was? Really asked. Mom, I'm busy, she mumbled. I have kids, work, so much going on. I know, I said. I was always there for you. But when I needed you, where were you? That's not true, she snapped, but her voice cracked, betraying her. I love you. You're my mom. I swallowed. The words I'd once craved now hollow. Love isn't just words, toy noi. It's actions, and you stopped acting a long time ago. She went silent, her breathing ragged through the line. When she spoke again, her voice was small, childlike. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just didn't think. I nodded, though she couldn't see. I know, I said, but I can't wait forever for you to remember me. The silence stretched, and I knew she was searching for a way to fix it, but it was too late. Is this it then? She whispered. Are you done with me? I took a deep breath, the ache in my chest easing. No, I said. I'll always be your mother, but I won't be invisible anymore. She didn't respond, just a soft, choked sound. I don't know what to say, she murmured. You don't have to say anything, I replied. Just know that I'm at peace with this. I hung up gently, the click of the phone like a door closing softly. I stood there, the kitchen warm around me, the scent of apples lingering in the air. No anger, no tears, just relief. I picked up the knife again, resumed slicing, the steady rhythm returning, and with it, a sense of calm. For the first time in years, I felt free. After I hung up the phone, I stood there for a moment, the silence of the house wrapping around me like a soft blanket. The anger I'd expected didn't come. Instead, there was a lightness, as if a stone had been lifted from my chest. I took a deep breath, the first full breath in what felt like years, and let it out slowly. The kitchen clock ticked steadily, marking the passage of time that now felt like mine again. The next morning, I woke with the sun. For the first time in decades, I didn't rush to make breakfast or check if anyone needed me. Instead, I pulled on my old sneakers and walked to the park. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of dew on grass. I found a spot under a sprawling oak tree, its leaves whispering in the breeze. As I unrolled my mat, I felt a flutter of nervousness. Could I really do this? But then I remembered this was for me. I began with a simple stretch, feeling the pull in my muscles, the earth solid beneath me. With each breath, I exhaled the years of tension, the unspoken words, the waiting. By the time I finished, the sun was higher, warming my face, and I realized I was smiling. A few weeks later, I did something I'd never done before. I booked a trip just for myself to the little coastal town where my husband had promised we'd retire before life took him too soon. I packed a small suitcase, feeling both excited and a little scared. The drive was long, but I didn't mind. I rolled down the windows, let the wind tangle my hair, and sang along to the radio. When I arrived, the sea stretched out before me, vast and blue. I walked along the shore, the sand cool between my toes, the waves lapping gently. For the first time, I wasn't thinking about anyone else, just the rhythm of the water, the salt on my skin, the quiet joy of being there in that moment. On my second day, I visited a local cafe, the kind with mismatched chairs and the aroma of fresh bread. I ordered a coffee and a pastry, savoring each bite without hurry. A woman at the next table struck up a conversation, and we talked for hours about books, travel, the beauty of the coast. She was a stranger, but in that moment, I felt connected, alive in a way I hadn't in years. It was a small thing, but it reminded me that the world is wide, full of possibilities beyond the narrow path I'd walked for so long. Back home, I found myself looking at old photo albums, the pages yellowed with time. There I was, holding my daughter as a baby, my face beaming with pride. There we were, at her graduation, her wedding, always together. But as I flipped through, I saw the shift, the smiles that didn't reach my eyes, the way I stood a little apart in later photos. It was like watching myself fade. Now, though, I was coming back into focus. The woman in the mirror looked different, stronger, calmer, with a spark that had been missing. I liked her. As I sat on a bench one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, I thought about why I wanted to share this story. It wasn't to hurt my daughter or to prove a point. It was for all the mothers out there who feel unseen, who give and give until they're empty. I wanted to say, you don't have to shout or make a scene. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stand up for yourself, quietly but firmly. Walk away from the table, change the will, book the trip, choose yourself, even if it feels selfish at first, because in the end, your peace is worth it. I used to live for their love, bending myself to fit their needs, their moods, their lives. But now, I live for the quiet moments, the yoga in the park, the solo sunsets, the soft click of the phone as I set my boundaries. I live for the peace that comes from knowing I am enough, just as I am.